Hey guys, welcome back to the Day in the Life podcast, Career Insights brought to you by ConsultPod. Big day today. The podcast has officially crossed 100 plays. I know what you're thinking, dude. That's so many plays. How'd you get there so quickly? I don't know what's going on, but yeah, Rogan, watch out. Uh, in all seriousness, I know it's nothing crazy, but want to try and celebrate every milestone along the way. Uh, it's been interesting so far. It's been a slow grind and actually getting traction on the Spotify or Apple Podcast page, but we've been getting a lot of traction on the Instagram, TikTok page where we post short form videos. If you're not following already, please do. It's ConsultSpot or ConsultSpot app on all social media. Quick little plug there, but yeah, so excited. Hopefully, we'll cross 1,000 plays sometime soon, and just continue to build from there. So everyone who's watched or listened so far, thank you, and I hope you enjoyed so far. So, transitioning into today's episode, we have another one of my good friends from college. His name's Brendan Pickett. He is a civil engineer at Pare Corporation in Massachusetts. So, we had a good conversation about what typical day is like, kind of just like the layout of that entire world with architects, civil engineers, things like that. Something that I'm not too familiar with. So, it was good, learning from him. So, uh, yeah, without further ado, let's jump right in. Hey, Brendan, thanks so much for joining us.
No problem. Excited to be here.
Great. Just to kick us off, do you mind giving us an overview of kind of what you do?
Yeah, sure. I'm engineer two in the building structures division at a civil engineering firm called Pare Corporation. I work in the Foxborough, Massachusetts office. We have three locations. Yeah,
Got it. That's super helpful. Before we jump deeper into your role, could you give us some context into your educational and work experience if you've had any internships or jobs prior to joining PAR?
sure. Yeah. So I went to UMass Amherst. I majored in civil engineering there. I got a bachelor's degree, 4 years. After my sophomore year, I took an internship at um, it was basically a project management company, and they did construction, general contracting. And I worked with basically superintendents, project managers, just kind of managing the different construction projects that they had going on. So I kind of got my foot in the door there. I wasn't exactly like it wasn't a civil engineering firm. It was more project management, general contracting, but it ties into civil engineering, so it was good experience. And then after that internship ended, went back to school for my junior year, and then I was able to land an internship with actually my current company, PAR, for the summer after my junior year, going into senior year, where I worked in the structures department, which I currently work in now. And then um, after I interned there for summer, I returned for full time after I graduated in the spring.
Got it. And what made you pick civil engineering out of all the different options that you had going into college?
So coming out of high school, I knew I wanted to do something in the maths and sciences. I looked into different types of careers, and that engineering kind of struck out to me, or stuck out to me. And so I kind of was looking at the different types of engineering. I actually attended a few different things hosted by colleges based that showed you the different types of engineering, and civil was kind of the my favorite of the different types. I liked the different hands-on activities they did, and the type of work associated with it just intrigued me the most out of the four. So decided to major in it, and that's what I applied to schools with.
I guess that's a good segue. What is a typical day in your life like right now, if there is one at all?
So a typical day for me is it could vary based on if you have projects currently in design phase or construction phase. So if you are in the design phase, which is most of my work right now, you're it's pretty much an office job. Go in the office. You're basically doing calculations, running models, different types of design aspects of whatever project you're working on. I mostly work on buildings with steel and concrete, so I just do a lot of stuff involving design work involving those two. If any of my projects are in construction phase, then I could be out on site, which doesn't happen too often, but I'll go out on site and you basically are just meeting with the contractor, superintendent, and walking around the site, checking out everything that's been installed, making sure it matches what's on the plans, what was designed. If they have any questions based on what's being built, you try to answer them and get them help. Sometimes you need to go back to the office and run some more numbers to make sure some things work. But so it really depends on if you're in design phase or construction phase, and that's specifically with my role as structural. But if I did a different discipline of civil, like if I was a geotechnical engineer or environmental, I most of your days you have many more days in the field than I do. Testing soils and things like that.
Okay, and within a typical civil engineering firm, what kind of roles are there? Like you have the civil engineer, who's like you said, there's a few different focus areas. Are there, designers that you're working with? Could you give at a high level who's actually involved with the project?
Yeah, so there's depending on the company, there could be different. You can have different disciplines. Some of the ones that we have are structural, which I'm in. There's transportation, geotechnical, um, site civil. There's bridge engineering, and then environmental engineering. And so, I mean, most engineers in each of those disciplines have similar roles where they're working on the design work. There's also, you can be working with, depending on which discipline you're in, you work with different people. So, like, specifically in structural, we work with architects a lot on our buildings. We're basically employed by the architect to help design the building, but someone like a geotechnical engineer would work with a drilling company on site that's doing the drilling in the soils so that the engineer can test the soils and determine the capacity of the soils. Environmental engineers might work with wetland scientists that um, go, analyze the site for different types of endangered species, wetlands, different things like that. So, um, but as a civil engineer in any of the disciplines, you're doing a lot of design work, I would say, for the most part.
And let's say like you're working on a specific building, right? Who's involved with it? So does it start with the architect that's like designing like the actual design of the building, and then does it transition to you guys to make it like, make, more tangible and figure out like the materials, etc. And then does it go over to the general contractors and you bring in like all different, contractors of various, backgrounds? Is that, can you give a high level overview kind of like what that flow looks like?
Yeah, so basically before, if there's a client that wants a project on new building or renovation and whatnot, there'll be bidding on the project between, so a general contractor will put together a team of the general contractor, the architect, and then the architect will hire a specific structural engineer, site engineer, geotechnical engineer, um, to be on their like design team. So together you're called the design team. And if you are awarded the bid, then it's now your project. And so the architect will be the lead on it. That basically has the idea of what the building's going to look like. They'll start on the renderings, the floor plans, what they want it to look like, and then we'll get involved with basically how that rendering is going to be supported structurally. And then we'll go in, design the framing. We call it like the skeleton of the building. And then from there on out, we kind of work hand in hand with the architect to bring the building to a complete design.
Got it. And what kind of tools are you using on a day-to-day basis for your job?
We use a couple different programs. There's a couple different engineering programs out there. The one we use most often is called RISA. It's a design program where you can model whatever structure you're working on, and it helps run the calculations for designing the structure. We use a couple different drafting tools for our drawings. Most likely Revit and AutoCAD. A lot more projects are moving towards Revit now instead of AutoCAD, but different disciplines within civil use AutoCAD more than Revit. Revit's more of a building program, and then there's other, the standard Microsoft suite, Excel, Word, all those kinds of things. And then there's like smaller structural engineering programs that you might get into once in a while that can be used for designing smaller structures when you don't need to model an entire building. Um, yeah.
Okay, that's helpful. I'm curious, what is the hierarchy within a consulting firm within civil engineering?
It could be an entry level engineer would usually be something like an engineer one. Step up from that would be like an engineer two. Then you could get to project engineer. Um, and basically, I would say we have like project engineer and senior project engineer. Um, and senior engineer is kind of like the lead on the project. And depending on the project size, there will be a project engineer or an engineer two kind of right below them working with them on it. And then an engineer one kind of also mixed in there on the design. Engineer one typically works on a more like greater number of projects because they're not working too much into the different projects, so they can work on different things of other projects to get their experience in the industry. And then once you get higher than that, you're more focused on like specific projects that you're working on that one until it's complete, and then you work on the next one until it's complete. And above senior project engineer, there's managing engineer, which is more of a manager of a bunch of different projects, allocating, budgets and things like that. That's kind of the main hierarchy, but managing engineers also still put in quite a bit of design effort as well.
Got it. And roughly speaking, how many years is someone spending at each of those positions before they can kind of move up the ladder?
I'd say, an engineer one typically is 2 to 3 years. Engineer two could also be in that same time frame. It also depends because there's differences in civil engineering between the company hierarchy and actual like registration. So in order for a project to go out, someone needs to stamp it. So someone needs to be a professional engineer, and that's decided by you need to have a professional engineering license, and in order to get that, you have to pass the professional engineering exam given by the state, and that kind of can also play a factor in determining your role within a company because if you're able to stamp plans, you're going to have a higher role than someone who can't stamp plans. So and that also is dependent on. So the guidelines for becoming a professional engineer are, I believe it's 4 to 5 years you have to work underneath a project manager in the engineering industry before you can apply to take the exam. And then once you take the exam, if you pass it, you become a professional engineer.
Got it. So it's not like something you have to do fresh out of college. You kind of get your experience and then you do it so you can lead engagements, right?
Yeah, correct. There's another exam that you take either your last year of college or your first year out of college. Well, you could take it whenever. It's called the Fundamentals of Engineering exam, the FE, not instead of the PE. If you pass that, you become a engineer in training, and that's when you work underneath a professional engineer. It's not required by It's really not required by most companies, but it helps a lot with getting a job out of college. And most companies, even though they won't require it, want to see it. So even if you get a job, they want you to take the exam. I took mine after I graduated while I had my job. But it also helps you with the PE because if you don't have an FE, then you have to wait longer to take your PE exam before you can take it.
Got it. And I know you've spent your entire career at Par, but I'm curious if you have any knowledge about what it's like to work at a, and Par is a comparatively smaller firm, if I'm not mistaken, right? It's more boutique.
Uh, yeah, it's around 100 to 150 employees.
Are there bigger civil engineering firms, sort of like, in management consulting, you have the, Deloitte's, Accentures of the world? I'm curious if there's, similar companies that are bigger players and what the difference is in terms of like lifestyle or work style at working for a smaller firm versus a bigger one.
Yeah, there's definitely bigger civil engineering companies. A lot of the ones that used to come to the career fairs in college were pretty big companies that have offices all over the United States. I think a lot of that work, I think you do end up working with people from all over the country sometimes. But given the nature of civil engineering, it's a lot of work that you see in just like your community or the surrounding area. That's where, there's always infrastructure projects going on.
Hmm.
I think no matter the size of the company, you're always going to be very much based at a specific location and working on projects at that location. Unless your company is very large and you're getting high profile projects like, stadiums and skyscrapers, things like that. Those kinds of projects will hire engineers from throughout the country, to get the best of the best for those types of structures.
I guess an interesting question is what have you worked on so far in terms of projects?
So I've done a lot of work with schools, educational facilities. So I've had a new high school building, new elementary school building. We've done a lot of work in the pharmaceutical industry. So companies that need manufacturing spaces for large and heavy equipment that needs to be supported so that they can manufacture pharmaceuticals. Those are two of our largest clients, I'd say, and then we do just other. When you work with certain contractors, you kind of they get familiar with you, and you might win some other types of jobs. So we've done other miscellaneous work besides those, but um, basically a mixture of like brand new multi-story buildings, like schools, brand new manufacturing facilities, and then also renovations of existing buildings, taking one building that was previously uh, utilized as like a office building and changing it so that it can now support manufacturing or other things like that.
Got it. I'm curious, have there been any surprises for you since you've started your career? And along those lines, what's the best part and the hardest part about your role?
Um, Surprises, I'd say the amount that project budget has to do with a lot of our work, which is probably one of the most, to follow up on your second question, kind of frustrating portions of the job is sometimes budgets can get messy and tight, and it doesn't. It kind of, not that it dampers the project or makes our work any less, but it's definitely something that is always there that you have to watch out for.
Hmm.
You like to just strictly focus on the design part of the project, but there's always that hanging over that you got to make sure you're within budget, because these projects only have a certain amount allocated up front for each portion of the construction phase. So it's always tough when extra work comes up if they want to add something, or if they did testing at the site and something came up, and it changes the design aspect. It can be challenging to quickly figure out how we're gonna adjust for that in the design, and make that happen. But I'd say the best part of the job is, probably when it's all done and you can go to the site at the end, and they'll have a ribbon cutting, and you get to see the finished building, and it's cool to see something you drew on paper for 12 months actually you know be right there in front of you.
Yeah, that has to be a pretty cool feeling, like something that you don't get to experience maybe in a lot of other jobs because you're actually building things in the real world. So that's pretty interesting. I guess you know second to last question: what is the standard compensation range for someone who's an entry level or someone with a few years experience as an civil engineer?
So entry level, I'd say you're looking at probably in the lower $60,000 range per year. Um, I'd say it probably varies by location. If a higher, cost of living area might be a little higher than that. That's coming out, with a bachelor's degree. Master's degree, you might start higher 60s, lower 70s. And then a couple years after that, work your way up to into the $80,000 range, and then you know, with each promotion comes another salary increase. So that's kind of the range you would start at.
Got it. And final question: if you had a chance to, do things slightly differently, or give some advice to someone who's maybe in college or high school, what would that be for someone who's potentially looking at careers in civil engineering?
Yeah, my advice would be to get as much exposure to the different disciplines as possible, early on, as soon as possible in your college career, because I really never. I wish I put more effort into figuring out which specific discipline I wanted. I want structural, so I ended up at the right place, but it took me going through an internship or two to figure out that was exactly what I wanted, which is always good. I mean, there's multiple sides to civil engineering, and a lot of times in college, you're learning, especially in your beginning years, the bare bones of all the different disciplines. Get quite a good feel for it. So um, you know, you get an internship, and if you're in that internship, if it's a multidisciplinary firm, see if you can do some work for each different discipline, even if you're just an intern in one of the groups there. See if any other groups need some work, and you can help out on it all, just to get a feel for what kind of stuff you'll be doing, and it'll help you decide later on which specific discipline you wanna go into.
Great. Well, Brendan, this has been super helpful. Thanks so much for joining us.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
And that's a wrap. Thanks again for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the podcast today. And as usual, if you want to speak to any of the guests featured on the podcast or anyone else in a career that's of interest to you, feel free to shoot us an email at hello@consultspot.com and we'll put you in touch with them. And yeah, also follow us on social media, Consult Spot or Consult Spot app on all platforms. I'll catch you on the next one. See ya.